Imagine you're sitting in a cockpit about the size of a phone booth. You've been airborne for 14 hours. There's nowhere to stretch your legs. You're wearing a pressure suit, you're breathing recycled air, and somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, you realize you still have 22 hours left to fly. This is what B-2 Spirit stealth bomber pilots do. Regularly. The B-2 flies missions that last up to 44 hours, sometimes longer. That means takeoff in Missouri, a strike on a target anywhere on Earth, and a landing back where you started, all without touching the ground. And for most of that time, there are exactly 2 people responsible for a $2.1 billion aircraft and whatever it's carrying. So the question is obvious: when do they sleep? And what happens to the plane while they do? The answer involves fold-out bunks, oxygen delivery tubes, and a level of human engineering most people never think about when they see that aircraft on the news. To understand how this works, you have to start with the aircraft itself. The B-2 Spirit entered service with the U.S. Air Force in 1997. It's a flying wing design, which means there's no traditional fuselage, no tail fins, just a smooth, boomerang-shaped aircraft that reflects almost no radar signal. The Air Force only ever built 21 of them. As of today, 20 remain operational. Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri is the only place they're stationed, which means every single B-2 mission in history has started from the same patch of tarmac in the middle of the country. The plane has a crew of 2, a pilot and a mission commander. They fly side by side in a cockpit that, despite the aircraft's massive 172-foot wingspan, is genuinely cramped. The B-2 wasn't designed for crew comfort. It was designed to be invisible, and that's exactly the problem when you need to fly it for 44 hours straight. The Air Force knew early on that 2-person crews couldn't stay sharp across missions of this length. Fatigue doesn't just affect comfort, it affects judgment, reaction time, and decision-making at the exact moments when all 3 matter most. So they built a solution into the plane itself. Behind the 2 cockpit seats, there's a small rest area, a fold-out bunk, not much bigger than a sleeping bag laid flat. There's also a toilet, a small galley, a microwave, and space to store food. It's not a hotel room, it's barely a closet, but it gives one pilot the ability to step away from the controls while the other manages the aircraft. The protocol works in shifts. One pilot flies while the other sleeps. Typically, the rest periods run somewhere between 4 and 6 hours, though the exact schedule varies depending on mission length and crew preference. Before either pilot rests, they brief each other on the flight plan, any expected weather, any sensitive phases of the mission coming up. Then one of them heads to the back, and the other stays up front alone. This is where things get interesting, because alone in a B-2 means something very specific. The aircraft is heavily automated. The fly-by-wire system handles most of the moment-to-moment control inputs. Autopilot manages crews. The mission systems on board can track targets, adjust routes, and handle a long list of tasks without constant human input. So the pilot who's awake isn't manually flying the plane every second. They're monitoring it, watching for anomalies, staying alert to anything the automation flags. But they are alone, for hours at a time, at altitude, over open ocean. no co-pilot in the seat next to them, no one to catch a mistake. The Air Force is careful about who gets to this point. B-2 pilot selection is some of the most rigorous in the entire service. Candidates need thousands of flight hours, previous assignments in other aircraft, exceptional performance reviews, and a psychological profile that suggests they can handle extended periods of isolation without losing focus. The washout rate for B-2 qualification is significant. Being a great pilot isn't enough. You have to be the right kind of person. Once pilots are assigned to Whiteman's 509th Bomb Wing, the unit that flies all B-2s, training for long-duration missions is built into the curriculum from day one. Crews practice sleep scheduling. They study fatigue management the same way they study navigation or weapon systems. There's research to back all of it up. The military has funded extensive studies on pilot performance degradation across extended sorties, and those findings directly shape how B-2 crews structure their rest periods. If you've ever pulled an all-nighter and noticed your thinking felt off somewhere around hour 20, you have a rough idea of what unmanaged fatigue does. Now imagine that happening in a $2.1 billion aircraft with a weapons payload and no runway beneath you. The protocols exist because the alternative is genuinely dangerous. One of the other tools crews use is the rest tube, which sounds almost absurd until you understand the physics of it. Pilots in pressurized aircraft are breathing filtered, recycled air. At altitude, even in a pressurized cabin, there's a pilot waking up sharp and a pilot waking up foggy in an aircraft moving at 650 miles per hour over the ocean. We cover military stories like this every week. If that's your thing, subscribe. The food situation is genuinely difficult, a test of mental discipline that doesn't get easier just because you've done it before. The isolation is real, the stakes are real, and there's nowhere to go. One pilot who spoke publicly about long B-2 sorties described the experience as a managed loneliness, a phrase that probably captures it better than any technical description could. You know there are people on the ground monitoring your flight. You know your crew partner is a few feet behind you, but in the immediate moment, it's just you, the aircraft, and a very long night. The longest confirmed B-2 mission on public record is from March 2003, during the opening days of Operation Iraqi Freedom. B-2 crews flew combat missions from Whiteman Air Force Base all the way to Iraq and back. Those sorties clocked in at roughly 44 hours. 2 pilots, 1 aircraft, one of the longest combat sorties in aviation history at that point. They landed back in Missouri the next morning. What makes those missions worth examining isn't the distance or the duration in isolation. It's the combination of everything required to sustain 2 human beings at peak performance across that window of time. The closet is its own kind of accomplishment. The Air Force has gotten very good at it. The 509th Bomb Wing has flown combat missions from Missouri to Kosovo, Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya, and landed every crew back home. The sleep protocols work. The training works. The aircraft systems that allow one pilot to rest while the other monitors work. But it is worth pausing on what work means here. It doesn't mean easy. The pilots who do this are managing fatigue the same way athletes manage physical training, deliberately, systematically. with an awareness that the body and mind have limits that cannot simply be willed away. The difference is that athletes train to win games. B-2 pilots train to stay functional in a situation where being wrong costs more than any of us will ever want to calculate. Next time you see footage of a B-2 banking against a gray sky, know that somewhere in that sleek, silent aircraft, someone just woke up from 4 hours on a fold-out bunk, ate a microwave meal at 40,000 feet, and walked back to the cockpit to spell their crewmate so they could do the same. That's the job. There's another story on screen if you're not done yet.